The Kev Baker Show.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be out there. A massive, huge, warm welcome to a very special broadcast of The Kev Baker Show tonight. It is the 7th of October, and I want to welcome each and every one of you, not only to The Kev Baker Show, but to the brand new, shiny looking truthfrequencyradio.com. Welcome one and all. And tonight I've got Johnny Whistles with me. And Johnny, we have got a very special show lined up tonight. But before we get to our very special guest, how are you doing, my man?
Actually, I'm doing fine, Kev. And tonight's show, Kev, I'm really pleased for you, mate, because you've spoke about this guy for a long, long time and kept me up to date with everything that's going on. So it's a great honour to have him on tonight.
Definitely, and I can resonate with this guy wholeheartedly. And it does take me back. Now, I want to give all the people in the chat room and the thousands listening live on the stream another big shout out, because it's thanks to you guys tuning in and listening to shows like The Kev Baker Show that we can offer a platform to the likes of tonight's guest. Now, tonight's guest is a gentleman called Ben Fellows. Now, Ben is a journalist, an investigator, a filmmaker, and I first became aware of this guy back in 2012 when he bravely came forward to start exposing the sexual abuse that we all now know is rife within the BBC and the acting industry on the whole. Now, he shared horrific details of personal experiences that he endured as a child actor and went on to recount an alleged sexual assault that took place while he was 18 years old. However, he was posing as a 15-year-old at the time. Now, this was while working on a very famous kind of investigation show in the UK called The Cook Report. And the person at the centre of the investigation of this episode just happened to be one of the higher, upper echelons of British society, and that man was former Chancellor Kenneth Clarke. Now, fast forward to 2013 when I embarked on this journey to become an alternative media presenter. And I had the absolute privilege and honour of meeting Ben and speaking to him both personally and listening to him speaking to thousands of people at the time. Again, exposing all of these people. And at the time, in fear for his life. Now, I kind of lost touch with the case with the fast-flowing world that we live in alternative media. But then in December 24, I became aware that Ben was arrested and thrown in jail for charges of perverting the course of justice for making these very claims. Now, this led to a court case that I'm sure a lot of you have heard. However, with the global reach of the Kev Baker Show, maybe some haven't. And Ben was literally in court facing down the British establishment. And guess what? Against unthinkable odds, this man actually won. And tonight, this is why it's such a great pleasure to have Ben on the show. And I'd love to welcome you finally to the show, Ben. And it's great after all these years to reconnect with you, man.
Kev, it's a pleasure. It's amazing to be on your show. I remember us, standing on the field at Bilderberg with all that craziness going on all around us and chatting about, various things and that. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, the pleasure is all mine, and your story has stuck with me all this time, Ben. Now, because we've got such a global audience, I know this might seem old hat to you, and you've got some new information to share, but I'd love to hear your brief history of who you are and how basically we ended up where we are today.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is that, I started life as a child actor from the age of 10. I was at the Royal Shakespeare Company, appearing with people like Jonathan Pryce and Hugh Quashie, people like that. And I ended up going to, after various agents, to the Sylvia Young Theatre School. And then after that, I became an investigative journalist. And I did my research years on a program called The Cook Report. I did 2 programs for them. And programs for other people and my own documentaries. I went to film school, got an MA and became a filmmaker, made commercials, documentaries and 4 feature films. And so that was kind of like, how my life was going. I was making documentaries and doing my film work. And then I was also sort of investigating things like the London 2012 Olympics, which I decided to go and join G4S. and to see how badly they were going to run the Olympics. And what I found out was absolutely shocking. And I basically came out and said, look, a terrorist could walk through the door, because they said they were going to turn off the X-ray machines and the metal detectors at peak times. So I came out with the story. I got into a lot of trouble because of that. I had my flat broken into, my car was stolen. I had a G4S guy sitting outside my house for 2 weeks, and even he didn't know why he was there. And, the police tried to set me up then for doing some weird robbery, but they stole my car too early. I saw them, and they came round to tell me that my car had been stolen. And I said, yeah, you're too early. I'm on the phone to 999 still, all that going on. So in 2012, I basically came out, this is in the wake of the Jimmy Savile scandal. And everyone was saying, look, Jimmy Savile was an evil man. It's just him. It was just him at the BBC. And I went, no, it's not. I worked for the BBC as a child actor and as an adult. And I'm telling you now that it goes on. It goes on with the executive. It goes on with other members of casts. It goes on, very high-profile people. And basically that's what I said. And I said, and also when I met a politician, I got touched up, and I explained that this was in an office. I was working for a television company. They thought we were doing something else. But what was interesting is that I was invited to go to Dolphin Square, which is now notorious. But it wasn't then, and I didn't know really what had gone on there. I didn't end up going. Well, what happened was what we didn't realise, and I'll come to the new bit in a little while, is that the police came around to speak to me. And after my articles appeared online and in the national newspapers here in this country, and basically wanted me to put, make an allegation against Ken Clark. And I said, look, I'm not interested. And they pressurised me. And in the end, I said, OK, fine, I'll do a statement. What I didn't realise was that then they turned that statement around on me. And because I'd signed a piece of paper, they kind of said, look, we're going to do you for perverting the course of justice, which, of course, I didn't realise. And that's when sort of everything sort of went pear-shaped, really. I mean, I was being followed before. I was having hassle. I was being threatened a lot.
Ben, I was really, really worried for you after we met you at Bilderberg. Some nights I was actually lying awake and wondering how you were, because I was just so fearful. The information you were uncovering, plus the fact that I seen in your face, your eyes, you were scared, weren't you?
Yeah, I was, and I'm not going to make any bones about that. And to a certain degree, I'm not anymore. And I'll tell you why I'm not anymore. But yeah, for all that period of time, for like 2.5 years, I was terrified. These people don't mess around. They don't play. People say to me and say, "Oh, well, being followed must have been a bit like James Bond." If you're on the receiving end of James Bond, that's terrifying. And I was, And I was, they were trying to set me up. They were trying to do all sorts of things to try and trip me up. In the end, they arrested me off a flight from Lanzarote when I came back to see my grandmother just before she died. And I knew they were going to arrest me. And sure enough, the anti-terrorist police were there at Birmingham. And as I landed, they arrested me, as I came through passport control, essentially. And then I ended up in prison for 18 days. In Wormwood Scrubs, and what was amazing about that was the inmates were so supportive. I mean, I didn't know where I was even. People knew I was going there before I did. The wardens came up to me and basically said, "We're looking after you. We know what you've done. We know what is going on." Even one prison guard tweeted from inside the prison, which of course he was risking his job to do so, to say that I was okay and where I was. So, it was an extraordinary experience.
Ben, I have to take you back just a little moment here, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that they used anti-terrorist police. Now, terrorists are, by definition, people who use violence or the threat of violence to bring about political change. How the hell did that refer to you?
Yeah, this is a good question. This is what the powers they've decided to use because it frees them up on everything. It frees them up for the spying side of things. They can put, they can tap all your calls. They can break into all your your Facebook page and delete things. They can go to your bank accounts. I've had my bank accounts cleared out about 3 or 4 times. The Halifax basically just said it's not our problem and haven't done anything. And so things are going on. And the idea is that you just have to rise above it. But they're using anti-terrorist laws against people like me and like you. And now it won't be anti-terrorist laws. It will be called extremist disruption orders that we'll get now in the future. Which is something that Theresa May is trying to bring in. When I spoke with some politicians last year, and they were talking about being non-violent extremists. That's how they were labelling us. So this is what they do, and it's very typical. This is what totalitarian states do to its own people. You come out with information and you're hounded and you're demoralised. And if you're not demoralised, then you're up for being injured and frightened, and your family frightened. Which happened to me. I was married at the beginning of this 2.5 years ago. I'm not married now because of that. It was such a difficult thing to go through.
Wow, unbelievable. Now, Johnny, I see you've got a question for Ben here.
Yeah, it was just to think, it's quite ironic that they charge you with perverting the course of justice when you're actually on about perverts.
Yeah, well, the thing is that the charge perverting the course of justice actually referred to the idea that I was making public statements about my case when there was an ongoing investigation. Now, I made no public statements while the police were investigating. They came to see me. I did the statement. They spent 3 or 4 months doing their thing. They came back to me and said, we're not going any further with it. Ken Clarke's above the law, blah, blah, blah. So, they can't go gallivanting off into Westminster. So I got angry at that, but the case was closed. I started sort of doing publicity things. I did the walk against corruption. I turned up at Bilderberg, all that kind of stuff was to try and highlight what was going on. And essentially, I didn't know that they had reopened a secret case against me. So that's actually what the charge was about. That's what the court case was about, really, at the heart of it, was about me sort of trying to sway the public while there was an ongoing investigation. But I didn't know there was an ongoing investigation because it was a secret one. They hadn't told me.
And you see, this is why it's very relevant to all of us, Ben, because with these extremist disruption orders that you're talking about, us in the alternative media, people who even look at the alternative media and hold opposing opinions to what the government deems correct, we could all be subject to these secret investigations. And then by going on further and still posting on social media as we do, unaware of the investigation, we're going to land up in a court very much like Ben did. And that's why it's so critical that Ben can come on here tonight and share his experience of not only being in that hell against that rigged system, but actually beating it. And that's one thing you did, Ben, wasn't it? You took them on and you won. Yeah, we did, and I did it in a very particular way as well. What it was, essentially, this court case was so extraordinary. No other court case has been operated like this, and the judge told us why. He basically didn't want any impropriety or whatsoever. It was going to run on time as far as he was concerned, and there was going to be no objections during the court case. They weren't allowed to object. What they had to do, essentially, was each barrister would have its time to talk. If there was something that really the judge felt was an objection, the judge would object, which happened 3 times. He kind of mentioned something very briefly. But essentially, it was a grown-up way of doing things. And there were 17 prosecution witnesses against me. And my witnesses were me and my mum. And that was it, because obviously my mum was involved in the story because she had actually helped me get the job at the Cook Report in the first place and knew the people and knew what was going on and what I was doing at the time and all that kind of thing. So that's the only witness I had, my mother. And they had 17 powerful people, which included people like, Roger Cook was there, multi-millionaire, TV executives, senior crime correspondents from the Daily Mail, the Press, Panorama programs, top BBC executives, top ITV executives, plus
Ken Clark, politician, and Ian Greer. They got him from South Africa. He came in via video link. They had detectives going over to South Africa to get him to make statements, to change his statements. And so there's 17 of these people, including David Henke from Exaro, who I worked with on the Cook Report and who he denied I ever met, and then broke down in court and admitted that he was mistaken there. He had obviously written an article whilst the investigation against me was going on, saying that he had cleared Ken Clark's name. And then, of course, we had the trial and I won. But the way that I won was something that was very much, we designed it. We knew what we were doing. We were going in there and it worked for us. And that's what I'm basically going to tell people, how to do this.
Well, I'd love for you to share with us some of this information, Ben. And you're also planning on putting together a public conference, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, the thing is that we're dealing with fear here. And I think everybody has got the right to know what I now know. I mean, lots of other people know it too, but this is in this particular context. And when people talk about neurolinguistic programming, NLP, some people think it's bad. It's a tool. And it's a great tool for getting what you want. And I've used some of it. I've used hypnosis. I've used, I do Kundalini yoga as well. And I think, well, look, the way that I approached course, I had help from my friend Joy, who's an NLP expert. And the way that we did it was to basically control my state of mind, because all I had to do for 2 weeks was sit there in the dock and not do anything, which is the most frustrating thing ever. You get all these people bad-mouthing you and saying all sorts of craziness, and you can't respond at all. But what we did was that we set the tone. To build the picture, if you imagine court number 1 at the Old Bailey. So the Old Bailey is the UK's top criminal court. The court number 1 is the hangman's court, because you've got the steps going down to the old hangman's place. And they tell you that when you go in there to scare you, it's kind of, oh, that you're in court number 1. We only have court number 1 for terrorists and murderers. So they tried that at first. And what we did, we held our state so clearly. And it's about getting rid of fear. So, when you've got some fears or something, or you're wondering what's going on, or like you said, you were wondering what I was doing late at night or whatever, because you were worried. Well, those images that play in your mind, what we do is we take those images and we make them very small, we blink them black and white, and we get rid of them. And we integrate another image that we actually want to have, which is going to be stronger, which is about me sitting there being very calm and confident. And we did this throughout the trial. And obviously, I couldn't have done it on my own. I had my friend Joy here to do it, and she took me through various exercises and what have you. And we changed the state of court number 1. So by the time day 3 came of court number 1, and we had people sitting in the public gallery as well, tuning in, and tuning up the courtroom. And it sounds really weird, I know, but it's exactly what we did. No, it does not.
No, Ben, this is the kind of thing that we talk about on here all the time. Everything at the base level is energy and frequency. It makes total sense to us.
Good. Well, this is great. And so we tuned the court. So by day number 3, even the judge knew something was going on. They couldn't put their finger on it. They kept asking us who my friends were who turned up. And I said, it's just my friend Joy and a few other people that popped in and out. And they moved us from court number 1, which was, no one ever wins in court number 1. If you go into court number 1, you are going to go down. It's the big court. They don't have anyone winning in that court. So they moved us to court number 7 by day 3, because even the judge and the staff in the Old Bailey knew something was going on. And they started
that in itself, Ben, that in itself is a massive victory. Just that act alone.
Yeah, it was, and we felt it at the time. So much so that the police, I think it was day 5, or maybe it was the Monday, the following Monday. Anyway, the police sent their entire unit to sit outside, because obviously when you go into court, I'm waiting in a corridor type thing, waiting to go into the courtroom, into the dock, and then the police are there, and they brought the whole police unit down to do the same thing. So they were there, and they were putting in their state, and we could feel it go around the room, around the court, but it didn't hold, because it wasn't anything. It was, it wasn't. They don't know the training properly. They can't properly do it, and we could feel it. So when people sat upon that dock and they were talking, people admitted extraordinary things that they didn't need to admit. Ken Clark admitted things that he didn't need to admit. We had people knocking over glasses of water, being nervous when there were supposed to be these power-dressing multimillionaire journalists or television executives. It really was a farce. And, what was interesting is that I became stronger. So the more that I listened, the more I relaxed. So if I heard something that I didn't like, or it was, apparently there to sort of, discredit me, my body would relax. And that's something that you can't fake. You have to go through the process, learn these techniques, and then your body does it. So the more that you relax, the jury look at you, they go, oh, well, he's not bothered. He looks relaxed. However, just before the trial, I was so upset and so freaking out, I have to say. I was coming up with things like, maybe I'll turn up to court in a tank and I'll show them what I'm like and, all this kind of stuff. And you know what? That I would have gone to prison had I done any kind of stupid sort of, publicity stunt or anything like that. So if it wasn't for my friend Joy, I'm absolutely certain I'd be in jail right now. And we're going to teach people how to do this. This is wonderful skills to have. I've learned a lot over the past 2.5 years. I've grown up a lot over the past 2.5 years, I have to say as well. And it really is a remarkable set of skills, because what it enables you to do is get what you want and hold your state of mind. And of course, as Dr. Richard Bandler, who created NLP, says, the person with the most powerful state wins. And that's what we created in court. We created a powerful state. I had love in my heart. I was thinking of my dog. I had that image of love and my dog mucking around and playing with his frisbee and all that kind of stuff. And that's what you need. Instead of I was not in a place of fear. I was in a place of love. And that's what saw us through it. And that's what other people did. I mean, also, we had some weird things go on, because we had some strangers turn up and who walked around the court tuning it up and getting rid of all the negativity. And we spoke to them afterwards, and they said, oh, no, we do this every now and again. We turn up. So it was coincidence that they turned up. And of course, I don't really believe in coincidence anyway. So it's serendipitous.
And Ben, you're on the truth frequency here, and it's not just called that by chance. The people behind the network here, they appreciate the fact that everything is energetic. And here you are in one of the darkest places in the world, court number 1 of the Saturnalian Brotherhood. And it just shows you how energy is so important. And another thing that was really key you brought up there was the use of NLP. Now, a lot of times in the alternative media, you will see things like NLP and the symbols that these elites use being demonized. But there's so much duality to everything. And we can use things like NLP in exactly the way that Ben's describing here for our own good, to empower us. We are the change, like we always say. And Ben, you're a very grounded character. And I've noticed when you were on Facebook, you were out camping a lot. And I expect that has you in tuned and at a good frequency as well. And that helps with the kind of energy levels and the things you're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, it's important to be in nature. When sort of last Christmas, when the court process really started kicking off, and I'd managed to get bailed, my friend Paul paid £5,000 to have me bailed, because it was 10,000 and they dropped it down to 5,000, and he paid for it, thank goodness, and I got out of prison. I immediately came down to Bournemouth and was by the beach. I was in the New Forest. I was being grounded into nature. And I think, the thing about NLP is that it is simply a set of tools in order for you to be able to change your state of mind to a positive one. Now, a lot of people do the training, and a lot of organizations have done the training. They get badly trained and they use it to forward their own agenda, their own company, like the police get trained in NLP. It's not a big surprise. So if you're trained in NLP as well, that neutralizes what they're doing. And of course, the most powerful state always wins. It's just about changing your state of mind and manipulating yourself, not manipulating other people. It's about manipulating yourself into a better position. So it's things like, feeling good for no reason whatsoever. Who wouldn't want to feel good for no reason? So that's what I've learned, and it's incredibly important. I was one of those people who was suspicious of NLP, I have to say, a few years ago. I was hearing a lot about it through Common Purpose programs and various things, and the UN were using it, until I really started looking into it. And of course, when I met Joy, she had been trained by Dr. Richard Bandler, who is the creator, along with a couple of other people, John Lavelle and I think a couple of other people as well. And I really started to understand exactly what it was. I went, no, this isn't the dark arts at all. These are just tools. These are, it's like I do hypnosis and I enjoy hypnosis. And, I've got my Paul McKenna things. I've got my Monroe Institute CDs that I listen to and all that.
I'm coming down to visit you one day real soon, Ben. Definitely.
Yeah, I do. So I'm into very much that. So this goes along with hypnosis very easily. It's but it's about getting the best out of yourself. Now, who doesn't want to have the best out of themselves? The thing is that I tested this NLP out in court, and I won. And I won because my state of mind was very, very clear. And then when I got up to talk, when it was my turn to be in the dock, I told my story coherently, and the prosecution barrister, a guy called Mr. Atkinson, they could see in the public gallery looking down that at one point he had his fingers crossed behind his back because nothing was working that he did. He could say things to me, and it was like water off a duck's back. It was literally like I was one step removed. And I wasn't nervous. I was just very straightforward. And at one point he said, "So all these people are lying?" And I said, and "Yes."
That's us right on the break then.
This is the Kev Baker Zone.
To the second part of tonight's very special and important broadcast right here on what I was going to call the Kev Baker Show. But tonight, this show is about one man, and I am proud to call this show tonight the Ben Fellows Show. I'm even getting messages during the break thanking us for this broadcast. Don't thank me, thank Ben. He was the one that bravely came forward. He was the one that won. And like I was sharing with Ben during the break, a lot of the time we centre on so many of the problems in the world. We don't have them to seek, do we? They're everywhere. And yet, here we are tonight, a man who has lived it. He has fought the system. And not only that, he's more concerned about coming on here and helping each and every one of us. And that is the spirit that I am talking about. We need more people like Ben in this world. And again, Ben, I want to thank you for your bravery, your courage, and coming on tonight. Now, we're back. We've only got 27 minutes left. The time flies on here. We were talking before the break about the neuro-linguistic programming, stuff like that. But before we get back into wherever you want to go, one thing that has been on the social media flying about all day today has been talk of the latest BBC documentary called Panorama. And this has been centred on these VIP paedophile rings, which are coming to the surface in the UK right now. Now, I haven't had a chance to watch this, Ben, but I believe you have. And you were kind of trying to tell me what this was all about. But I'd love you to share that with the audience.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that there is the establishment is panicking, and what they've decided to do is essentially they've decided to muddy up the waters. And the way that they've done this is they've taken these two people, Darren and Nick, these two abuse victims, and we're not quite sure who these people are and where they've come from. All we know that they've got horrific stories detailing abuse to themselves and to others, taking place at locations like Dolphin Square and children's homes, Elm Guest House, etc. And what they've done is they've taken the people that were sort of their support, so social workers like Chris Fay and what have you, and basically coming out to the members of the public to say what these people have experienced have been false memories. Now, certainly something has happened to them, but it hasn't happened to them the way that they think it has. And certainly the people who, they think has done this to them, that's been an invention of their mind. That again, they're going down the fantasist road and what have you. And basically, it's the first sort of attempt to fog everything up, as it were, and to put a question mark over the members of the general public. But actually, what was really interesting about that was that the BBC Panorama, being an investigative journalist programme, and in actual fact, Sylvia Jones, who was part of the Cook Report and a part of My Case, works for Panorama as well. I don't know if she works on that particular programme, but she certainly works on others. they didn't follow any of the lines of inquiry bar one during that program. And I think that's interesting. And also what's interesting is that they didn't actually come out and say that child abuse and has even affected the BBC. So therefore, they're not impartial. When you, as an organisation, if such horrific allegations have been made against you, and then you're making a programme about those, about different allegations, you have to at least come out and say, well, even the BBC isn't immune because there are ongoing investigations regarding executives at the BBC. We've just got one executive at the moment at the BBC, a former executive, a Dutch guy, who was filming children and adults making sex films while he was a BBC executive and on BBC salary, using BBC equipment. This is the BBC. It was quite predictable. I actually thought it wasn't as bad as it was going to be. I felt very sorry for some of the contributors. They were clearly made to say things. There was clearly a bit of acting going on at certain stages with certain individuals and what have you. But this is all designed to put a question mark over the public's head about fantasists and about people making things up who are traumatized. They're not saying that these people haven't gone through situations. They're just saying, well, it's not, Leon Britton. That's not the guy who raped you. You made that bit up. That's a bit of fantasy or something. Or someone has, I think they tried to accuse Chris Fay of implanting into people's minds, the idea that these were politicians, what have you. I mean, I don't know. So,
and Ben, one of the other cases that they've tried to almost hijack, for lack of a better term, is this Hampstead satanic cult that came to light because of the young children, whistleblowers, and Ella and Abraham, who told their story. Now, we covered that, and we were quite happy to have them on this show as well. However, the Daily Mail, they were again trying to go down this fantasist kind of road. What do you think the overall agenda is here, Ben? Why are we seeing all these cases coming to light at this time, do you think?
Well, because they have a problem, the establishment does, and it's a serious problem that cuts across all the parties of politics. It's not everybody. There is a tiny minority of people in government, as there are across society, who do these things, who abuse children, who pass around indecent images of children. The Silver Young Theatre School has a teacher at the moment who's under arrest for downloading indecent images of children. These people are there in society. There are predators in society. And there's no reason to think that in politics there's, 600-700 politicians. A few of them are going to be, these predators. And of course, a lot of them are in the Tory party because they've gone to Eton. And Eton is famous for paedophile teachers. It is famous for fagging. When I did the Walk Against Corruption, we turned up at Eton and they were very scared of us being there. But we actually paid money and went on the tour and asked them what fagging was all about. And they said it's child abuse, essentially. And so this is what trauma-based mind control is all about, is you get them very young, and then essentially as they grow up, you formulate who they are, and you take away their empathy, you take away their soul, you take away their personality until you get one of these creatures in front of you who will do anything. And of course, it's in business, it's in politics, and more often than not, it's in it's in the secret services. They film these guys to blackmail them, and that's even the police told me that DCI Paul Settle said, child abuse is the gold standard of intelligence operations when I filmed him in my flat in London. So
exactly. The thing is, they were quite happy. We live in a country where there was a publication called the Paedophile Information Exchange. MI5 knew all about it, but did they go and arrest these people? No, because these people are perfect for putting into positions of power, because then they are controllable. And that is how the agenda remains the same. Now, I heard a little birdie telling me, Ben, that you were considering entering the world of politics. Have you had any more thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, not really. It was a joke, really.
Good, Ben, good. Because I feared for your soul, man. They would have polluted you in there.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't have happened because, ultimately, look, they have a problem. And their problem is so severe and it goes to the top of society, the very top. And so they're having to now confuse it in the public's mind so much that people in the public will just suddenly, they'll turn around and start to think, oh, actually, maybe it is all just fantasy. Maybe these people are making it up, or they have had something happen to them. But, and that's all that they want. They want that question mark. Now, the trouble is with this, we don't know who this Darren and Nick is, right? I'm saying that they're genuine at the moment, but I don't know who they are. No one does. We don't know who they are. I haven't spoken to them. I haven't interviewed them. No one I know has. So we simply have to sort of let that line take it at face value until we know differently. However, this all could just be used. Their stories could have been used as a false flag to muddy the waters, to make sure the police come out and say, yes, they're credible and it's great intelligence, and then suddenly to turn around and say, actually, it's collapsed because there actually isn't any evidence. Because the thing is about child abuse and these historical allegations, what we've got to be very clear on is that there is no physical evidence available. The physical evidence would have been lost 20 odd years ago. There was no evidence in my case. The prosecution essentially had people's testimony. And Jimmy Savile, just to give you an example, had over 400 statements written against him by individuals who went down to a police station and who made a complaint. Now, if 400 statements against one individual doesn't cause a court case, that is evidence, essentially. And also the fact that we've had dossiers missing, we've had tapes go missing in my case. Now, the fact is we know that those dossiers existed and we know those tapes existed. So where we know they existed for a fact, the lack of that missing evidence is actually evidence in itself. So, on one hand, the police can say, well, we've got all these people saying that you weren't there and you didn't do this. And there's all this evidence, which is just people's testimony. But then when it comes to them, essentially, they want hard evidence. Well, actually, it's people's testimony that's correct. If you have 3 or 4 people who don't know each other, have never met each other, but are saying roughly the same story about the same person, then put that in front of the court and let the jury decide, because that's what they did with me. And you know what? That's why I won, because the jury didn't believe the prosecution. The jury didn't believe Kenneth Clark or any of the other people that turned up. They believed me because I was telling the truth, essentially. So therefore, if we get these people, and if there are multiple witness statements against these individuals, then that should just be put in front, given to the CPS and then put in front of a jury. It was good enough for me. I can't see why it's not good enough for any of these politicians.
Well, Ben, one thing about the video in your case, now, I don't want you to get yourself into trouble here, but Mr. Cameron was head chief of communications at the time at Carlton TV. Would he know where that tape went to? Yeah,
of course. I mean, the thing is that we were planning on calling David Cameron, but of course there's rules about calling an active prime minister into a court case. But I was going to try and do it anyway until my barrister sort of laid it out for me. So you can't actually do that. But we certainly were going to try and get a letter, some sort of statement from him, had it have gone that way. But yeah, he was. I was told this by Michael Green, who was the chairman of Carlton Communications. So I entered this into the court, and my barrister used it. And anyway, we didn't actually have to get a statement from David Cameron or anything like that. But that was on the cards had it have gone that way. But luckily we won the point, so we didn't actually have to go down. In other words, the prosecution conceded that that was the case and that the tapes had gone missing within Carlton. And David Cameron had passed the tapes on to a lawyer, and then no one had seen them then. So, I mean, we don't really know, because that hasn't really been investigated, whether David Cameron had they passed across his desk, he knew what they were and was doing a favour. We don't actually know. All I know is what Michael Green told me, which was David Cameron had the tapes and then they got passed on to a lawyer.
Now, Ben, Ben, we've covered this kind of topic for a long, long time, and I know that we have victims that listen in, and you're one man that can probably speak to these people and offer them some advice for the ones that haven't really coped with it as well as you have, sir. What advice would you offer them right now?
Well, it's I mean, I don't know what I can say to anybody, quite frankly, that's going to make them feel any differently from the way that they do, except to say that what helped me with all of this was to think that, the past is in the past, and I started working on myself in the present. And when I got control of my state of mind and I started to understand why I was terrifying myself with all these images, I had images of what happened to me 20 years ago. I had images of people, I was at parties and I was being attacked by people. I had all sorts of things. My brain was terrifying. My mind was terrorizing me over the past 8-9 months and a couple of years, really, I suppose. So once I got control of my mind, I began to sort things out properly so that I wasn't terrorizing myself and I could deal with it. I've just been speaking to victims and this week and survivors, and one of them, I'm not going to mention who they are, but is finding it very difficult to actually tell their story, because what's going on in their mind is a running commentary of their abuse, essentially. And what we found out is that we can take that running commentary and get rid of it completely, and it doesn't take very long. It takes about a few minutes to realize that you can do it, and then a bit of practice, and then an hour or so you've got to keep it up, you've got to keep doing it. But it'll be different things then. And then what it means is that because you've got control of your state of mind, when you're talking to the police or when you're talking to social services or, your landlord or whatever it is you're having problems with, or it's just trying to talk to somebody about what happened to you, you're doing it in such a way that you are very calm and that you're very together, and people take you seriously and differently. And I think that's what was important for me, was that when I spoke, people understood that I meant it, that this was not something that I was flaky on. It wasn't something that I wasn't quite sure what happened when. No, this is what happened, and this is what these people did to me. Yes, you can pull apart bits and pieces of it, and they did, but they didn't. None of their arguments stood up whatsoever. And that's how we won. I controlled my state of mind, and that's what I want to give to other people. That's what I want to try and help victims and survivors, especially victims and survivors of child abuse. But essentially, we can help everybody to gain control of their state of mind, to become the people that they were always meant to become. And yes, because things have happened in their past that meant that they've been traumatized, it doesn't mean that the rest of their lives are going to be traumatized. In actual fact, they can be stronger people. They can get justice in a form. It might not be the justice that they're thinking of. I mean, my case is still ongoing, essentially. I got beaten up by the police on the 7th of September of this year. They asked me to go back to the police station, to their big secret headquarters, to collect my computer that they'd stolen from me, essentially, 2 years previously. And the security beat me up. And the police arrived, and the anti-terrorist police again. And after them talking to me, I got myself into I'd just been beaten up. So I was lying on the floor. I was face down. The police arrived, wagons, and all, they started jumping out and shouting. And I put myself back into that state I was in the courtroom. My breathing slowed. My mind became calm. And even though I was in pain and I'd been kicked and I'd been punched quite severely, when I was dealing with those policemen, I was telling them exactly what had happened to me. They were trying to accuse me of taking pictures of a sensitive building or something, which was absolutely rubbish. The security people were. It was just an excuse to beat me up, essentially. So I showed the police my tablet. I said, can you see any pictures of the building on that? They said no. And they spirited off the security people. And the policeman came to me afterwards, one of them did, and said, Ben, this is not a conspiracy against you. Understand that? And I went, are you telling me or trying to convince yourself?
Yeah.
And this is absolute. I mean, here's a guy, you're listening to a guy, Ben Fellows, who is still under the microscope. And yet here he is offering other people his advice and to help them. If that isn't a true mark of this guy, then I really, really don't know. Now, Ben, you're planning on putting on this public kind of conference. Is this down in Bournemouth in November?
Yeah, it's going to be the first one's going to be in Bournemouth, and what we've done, it's part training day and part sort of conference, really. So we've got some guest speakers going to come up, and they're going to tell their stories. And like yourself, I'd love you to either come down or do something over Skype and
we'll
talk
definitely
to
sort something out, Ben. I would love to.
Yeah. So that's going to happen. But also what we're going to do is I've got a team now of people who are extremely experienced in NLP and helping people change their states. Joy, who helped me during my case, is going to be down there. She's going to be doing, I think, about 3 hours with people. So we're going to do a training day, and it's going to be real tangible skills that people are going to learn so they can come down. It's not going to be expensive. It's going to be about 20 quid. We're trying to confirm the venue now. It's going to be across the weekend of November the 21st. 2015, so we're doing it quite soon, and it's going to be a training. So if you want to go on an NLP course, it's going to cost you $3,000. You can come down here, and we're going to give you the basics, and then hopefully from then on, that's something that then you can then take forward personally and discover more. And of course, we'll be doing other ones, and hopefully if it's successful, and I don't know if it will be, because I don't know if people will come. I'm hoping they will. Because I think people really do need the kind of help that I had. So let's give it back and let's try and, change things. So if people do come down, then we'll tour it around the country and see where we can go from there. I mean, even if I'm talking to 10 people, it doesn't matter. That's 10 people we can help, who can then go out into their communities and start affecting really start affecting the sort of positive changes in their community.
Ben, you're a very humble man. You're going to attract a lot more than 10 people. You're one of these energetic souls that stand out, and people will resonate with you. And like you say, £20 compared to 3,000. I mean, the venue alone will probably leave Ben out of pocket. But Ben, I encourage everyone to try and get down to that, because this NLP stuff, I'm very interested to learn more myself, just for everyday situations. It would be lovely, like Ben says, to actually just sit there and feel good about yourself for no reason. And Ben, this show is now your show anytime you need it, and I'd love for you to come back, talk to us about NLP, stuff like that. But of course, you're a journalist as well. You've worked undercover at the Olympics, and the Olympics was something I was very, very worried about for a potential false flag. Now we've got a couple of minutes left. I'd love to get your take on the state of the world right now, with the fact you are a journalist and you look at things going on. What do you make of what's going on in Syria and the fact our government are still determined to drag us in there?
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting is that the New World Order, the political paradigm that people are refusing to believe in, but even President Putin the other day did a speech, and on the background of the board it said New World Order, rules or no rules. And so this is the New World Order. This is what they're about. They're carving up the world. They've got into Syria. They've used ISIS. ISIS is a false flag terrorist organization made up of mercenaries from all over the world, in actual fact, and they're obviously terrorizing, killing people. Putin's gone in, and this is all part of the game plan. If you read Carol Quigley's book Hope and Glory, I think it's called, he details the end game of the New World Order, and it was about Russia coming into Europe and China, and essentially them saying, we can run the world better than you can because you're corrupt and you're this and you're that, and you look at all these wars that you get involved in and stuff, and what have you, and being sort of the peacekeepers force along with the UN. I mean, just going to the Olympics and stuff, I mean, a lot of people were saying a lot of things about the Olympics, and they said, well, we're really glad nothing happened. But from my point of view, it happened. I went in there, I saw the security, I saw that we were going to turn off the X-ray machines and the metal detectors. So if you see that, you have to say something. You have to stand up and say, look, we knew that there was a nuclear reactor underneath the Olympic Stadium from St Mary's College, and we also knew that reactor could go up with a very minor bomb. So it wasn't something that I was going to stick around for and just watch to see what happened. So you have to stand up and you have to say these things. So that was the New World Order games.
And, Ben, I looked at 2012 as well, and, just something like the action you took, that undercover work and the fact that you came out with that information. Now, people will say, aha, look at these maniacs, nothing ever happened. Could it be that nothing happened because guys like you helped to expose their plans? You actually shone a light on them. Now, we'll never know if that was the case, but it's something for people to bear in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't want to see a mushroom cloud over a city. So if I know of any information that can prevent that, then I'm certainly going to do it. I don't mind being ridiculed afterwards, saying, oh, well, nothing was going to happen anyway. Something happened. They put really bad security in there. G4S, which was connected to Ken Clark, by the way, which was completely coincidental.
Go figure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's one of the worst security companies in the world. And this is the New World Order security company. It's part of their private police force. They're going into police stations. They're going all over the world. So they're carving up the world. And, you've got various territories now in the world being carved up by the New World Order. Obviously, we live in the European bloc. So we've been captured a long time ago by them. And we're seeing what they're doing to individual countries to try and break them. We've seen what they're doing to Greece. We can see what they're doing, in different parts of Spain. I've just been in Spain recently, and everyone's talking about what's going on there. And, and they're actually all sort of a lot more awake than we are, I would say, on the whole. But, you go anywhere in Europe and just outside of Europe, especially to the Middle East, and it's been caused into chaos. And we're doing that. This country is doing that. And America, our political masters at the banks are involved. And, we could go into great detail about individual bankers and all this kind of stuff, who's doing what and where. But the fact is that they're doing it. And it's up to us to wake up. I mean, even the Pope has got his album coming out at Christmas saying, wake up, because what they do as the New World Order is they have to have a tacit agreement between them and you. So when you go and see a film like The Matrix and it's successful, they say, oh, well, everyone wants to be plugged into computers and go, oh, we'll do that. Then they'll love that, which is what Apple and Google and all that kind of stuff, artificial intelligence is all about. And so, if the Pope says, well, wake up and you don't, then don't say that we didn't warn you, essentially is what they're saying, because it's really going to hit the fan. And of course, we've known this is going to happen for a long, long time. We've been talking about it. I believe I can't wake people up who don't want to be woken up. And I've got members of my own family who won't wake up. And ultimately, I think we're here for people for afterwards. For whatever's going to be afterwards, we can explain what happened. We are the storytellers. We are the keepers of continuity of our own society. And that's the most important thing, is that we don't forget what's happened. And we need to stand up. And, and there'll be a time when the world will come together as one, but it won't be under a totalitarian dictatorship. It will be under love. And that's where we've got to get to. And we're getting a lot of help from that. Ken Clark, said in court that, he felt like, the Martians had landed. We're not from Mars.
Now, Ben, we're almost out of time. I can't thank you enough. I mean, this last 5 minutes here, you've shown that you have got an absolute grasp on what is going on in the world. Where can people find your work, Ben?
I've got a website called www.planetearthx.org. It's a new sort of political idea about governing ourselves without government. I've had my Facebook page taken down yesterday after announcing the conference, so we try and get a new Facebook page up or